co-founder and CEO of EasyA, and today I'm going to give you my top tips for revision success. Now these are going to help you in 11 plus, 13 plus, GCSE or A-level and beyond, even university. And these are sort of really secrets that I'm sharing for the first time, things I've picked up along the way at school, at university, whenever I've been doing exams, things that have really helped me to get top marks every time. As a brief intro on myself, I went to St. Paul's School, was a scholar there, went off to Cambridge, again achieved top marks in a lot of my exams, top tripos, which is sort of what they refer to as exams, in many of my papers, and also never got less than a first in my end of year exams. So here are my top secrets for success. Again, I've never shared these with anybody before, especially for you guys. So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm going to break up revision into 3 steps. And this is going to be the core of what I talk about today. When people talk about revision, you know, this might be 11 plus revision, or it could be GCSE or even A-level revision. When people talk about it, they say, oh, you know, I'm just going to do some revision before the exam and everything's going to be fine, right? I just do the revision, right? And in many ways, yes, putting in the work is really important, but you've got to do it right. And what that means is understanding more about the learning process. So I generally break up learning into 3 distinct parts. Number 1 is what I call the learning phase. So this actually means really base building, if you take a sort of sports analogy. And then number 2 is what most people commonly refer to as revision. So that's the sort of the bulk of revision itself. And then third is commonly overlooked. Actually, it's overlooked by pretty much everyone, and that is consolidation. Again, extremely important part, but yeah, often overlooked. And that's the bit that you do just before exams. As a sort of a brief summary of, you know, those 3 parts. So, learning is base building, getting the foundations right. Revision is when you come back and you look at things again. Sort of typically happens over the holidays. And number 3, consolidation, is when you're sort of tapering, just getting sort of that 20 to 30% extra into your brain and also into your exam technique. So let's dive right in. Let's get stuck into what learning is. Now, the reason I'm explaining these different steps and explaining what learning is to give students confidence. So often people will go into, or students rather, will go into a class having never studied the topic before, right, with zero knowledge. Let's take an example. Let's say trigonometry. They'll start studying trigonometry, first lesson, and they'll come out to the lesson sort of an hour later and think, wow, that went completely over my head. Had no idea as to sort of what the teacher was talking about. I'm terrible at trigonometry. And this is to say that if you find yourself thinking that, don't be worried. You know, this can be any topic. Could be, you know, subtraction, addition, simultaneous equations, different types of algebra. If you're studying a topic for the first time and the teacher's been talking about it for an hour, but you've come into it with zero knowledge, don't expect to leave the class understanding everything, even understanding, you know, half of it. Don't expect that. You know, you might come to the end of the class and you're only 0.05% of the way to fully understanding things, and that's absolutely fine. A lot of students get flustered at this, and they end up thinking, you know what, I'm no good. And that's just not true. Even when you come to the end of sort of the course, right? When you come to the end of the 10 classes that your teacher has set aside to study that topic, so in this case trigonometry, don't expect to understand all of it. When you come to the end of the learning phase, I typically think that students should only really be aiming to have understood 20 to 30% of it. So that is the base building aspect. And I talk about base building, and I'm going to refer to a couple of analogies from sports throughout it. You know, I was a swimmer at school and also played water polo at university, was also rowing at school. And that's why I guess I use these analogies. But when you look at it, base building is really about building the foundations. So in the winter months, runners will often just build in what they call sort of miles, right? The base building, winter miles, where they're just going out, they're doing the activities, but they're not aiming to be ready for race day at all, right? This is winter, sort of it's raining, it's December, and they're not training for the races that will come up when it's summer, and they're sort of on the track. And in the same way, when you're studying a topic for the first time, don't expect to understand all of it, right? That's fine. That's absolutely fine. Don't need to know all of it. When you come to revision, however, it's a totally different ballgame, right? Now you're trying to understand things more, right? And I'm going to start off the revision section of this video just explaining a little bit about what revision actually is and what you should be doing. And a really nice way of doing that is by actually looking at the word itself. So I'm a big fan of Latin, and let's break it down into its Latin root. Revision is made up of two pieces of Latin. So it's re, and then vision, right? And that comes from the Latin video. In English, we say video. It's something that you see, right? So in Latin, it consists of re, which means again, and then video, which means I see. So if we put that together, revision means seeing the same thing again, right? So we're looking at things that we covered in the learning phase again. And that's all it is. So importantly, you're not necessarily looking to cover new material that you've never studied before in class, but at the same time, you're just looking at it again. And you're not preparing, it's not like, preparing for race day, right? There's nothing in revision, re video, which means I'm going to, be ready for my exams. It's just looking at the stuff again. That's it. And once you understand that, it's going to give you confidence again. So all you're looking to do is to take yourself from that 20 to 30% that you built up in your base building learning phase and bringing that to 60 to 70%. It's going to take you a long way. But that's why you're going to be doing your revision during the holidays. So during term time, you're just not going to have enough time. Everything's going on. You've got your sports. You've got tons of different subjects. You're not just doing maths, right? You're doing your French. You're doing your English. And the teachers are all setting you homework at the same time. You don't necessarily have the time. And you'd probably get burnt out if you tried to do your revision during term time as well. So that's why when you come into the holidays, it could be Christmas, could be summer if you're doing the 11 plus, could be Easter generally, then you're going to be doing sort of revision during those breaks because you're going to have time to sit back a little bit, not necessarily relax, but you're going to have the time to let it all sort of digest and let it all sink in. And what you're doing during revision is going over what you learned during term. So you're going to open your textbooks, you're going to have a look, reread everything, and maybe you're going to be doing a couple of questions as well to make sure that you understand the materials. But really, what revision is about is taking in the material you've learnt and going over it to make sure that you actually sort of understand it when you have the materials open. I'm not talking about necessarily memorizing everything yet. We'll come on to that in consolidation. But what you're looking to do in revision is to let everything sink in. Let your brain just get to grips with the material. So by the end of your Easter break or summer break or Christmas break, whatever holiday you're studying in, could also be half term, don't forget half term. By the end of that, you'll want to have sort of finished coming to grips with the material, and that's the revision. But the myth is that by the end of revision, you're going to be able to take the exam, and that's just not right. So that is where a lot of students sort of trip up. They've done the revision, they've done the learning, but what they haven't done is the consolidation. Now, I will again come back to the Latin to explain a little bit about consolidation. So what consolidation means in Latin, it's made up of two parts again. Con, which means together, so bringing things together. And then solidare, which means to make something solid, I guess, means really firm, right? To firm something up. And what you're doing is combining everything together and firming it all up. So consolidation is when you take what you revised and learned, and then you bring that all together and make sure it all fits, right? It's very easy sometimes during revision to segment everything up. So I'm studying trigonometry, I'm studying this, I'm studying algebra. But what you need to do in consolidation is make sure that you've brought all of that together and you can understand, you haven't forgotten any of it. Because when you're in the exam, it's not going to be just like, the algebra paper or the simultaneous, simultaneous equations. It's part of algebra, but it's not going to be, the trigonometry paper. In other subjects, it also won't be the same. It's all going to be mushed up sort of into one paper. Not all. Sometimes they split things up. You can have a non-verbal, verbal reasoning paper, things like that. But generally, it's not going to be as segmented as it was when you were studying it, so during term time. in your classes. So that's really important. And to take the sports analogy again, when I was doing sports, swimming, water polo, what we would often do is have a little tapering phase. So after we built up our bases, after we'd come into spring and sort of really been finessing our skills as well, making sure we understood how to play the game in water polo, making sure we had our technique really refined as much as we could, we would then go into a tapering phase. I mean, especially we did this in swimming. But what that means is 1 to 2 weeks out from race day, you're starting to tone down the training a little bit. So you're taking down the volume. And this might seem strange to a lot of people. You might think, oh, why these athletes taking down their training when their race is coming up, when it's just 2 weeks away? Surely they should be training more. But again, that's a trap that you can fall into. And the same happens with revision. When you come close to the exams, what you should be actually looking to do is wind down the amount of work you're doing. But that's still helping you, because what you're doing is really crucial. What you're doing during the tapering period is making sure that you are prepared for race day, for exam day. So what you're doing is you're doing what you would have to do on exam day. For the races, what we would do is, let's say we were doing 100-meter sprints for our swimming races, or for sprinting. I'm not a sprinter, but let's say you're doing 100-meter sprints. What you would do is go and do the 100-meter sprints. No need to run, kilometers and kilometers a day. Just do the 100-meter sprints. Get in the zone. For exams, again, really important to get into the zone. If your exam is starting at 9 o'clock in the morning, during the consolidation period, do the test paper at 9 o'clock in the morning. If you know that you're not allowed watches into the exam, don't wear a watch. Focus on just using the clock that they have, wherever it is at the side of the classroom. Set it up in your room, wherever you're taking the test. If you're only allowed to write in pencil, only use a pencil. Writing with a pen is completely different. Or if you're only allowed to use a pen, don't use a pencil, because you can't rub things out, right? If you only have a permanent marker, permanent pen. So that's really important. Leave those 1 to 2 weeks for consolidation to bring everything together. And that is going to set you up for success. And then also importantly, don't necessarily think that you have to keep on working right up to exams. What I typically recommend, and what I always used to do, is before exams, take 1 to 2 days where you really don't do much at all in the way of revision or sort of studying. Just relax, let your brain calm down a little bit. You've been studying for months, your brain needs a little bit of a break. And that will really reward you when you come to the exam, because you're going to come into the exam feeling fresh and motivated, like you can really do it. And that's it, right? It's as simple as that. If you apply these steps, you'll be set up for success. So in summary and to conclude, there are 3 paths to learning. Number 1 is base building, the learning phase, when you're in class and you're covering material for the first time. Phase 2 is revision, or what people typically call revision itself, when you're going back over the material. But number 3 is often overlooked, and you shouldn't forget it. It's the 1 to 2 weeks before exams when you're preparing yourself for exam day. You're getting into the zone. You're not learning any new material. And you're just making sure that when you come into the exam, you're able to do it really well. So that's all I had to say. I'll keep it relatively short and snappy. But that is really my top tips. Those are my top tips for success. I'll tell you, I applied these and only really fully finalized them when I was in university. But I used those to make sure that I was performing at a consistently super high level every time. And now if you also apply those to your own revision strategies, or rather your own studying strategies, you will also do really, really well. So that's all I had to say. If you have any questions at all, just leave them in the comments below, or feel free to email me. Other than that, we've got an amazing virtual conference set up to you with other speakers on the 11+, GCSEs and Oxbridge, and a little short video at the end as well, at the end of the series. I won't give it away, but it's going to be really interesting, going to give you great food for thought as well. And without further ado, That's all from me. Thank you for watching, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.